y'all? Marvin here from Blacktop Banter. Really quick, just wanted to talk about the 800 Pavement Network. As you can see, we have some lettering there, lettering on our other truck over there, lettering on this truck here. They all say 1-800-Blacktop. We've been using the 1-800-Blacktop number here for the last couple years. It's really been exceptional for us as far as making things click with our branding, and now that we're in another state, those area codes are together. It's worked out fantastically for us. The other thing is that 800 Pavement Network has other advantages. There's group discounts on a lot of the products and materials that we use within our industry. We're part of over 300 different, see that one? Over 300 different contractors that are now using these numbers all over the country. That's combined over $2 billion in gross profits. So if you've been thinking about it or you're curious about it and you're like, well, should I or shouldn't I? DM me, message me, or reach out to 800 Pavement Network. You can find them online through their website. You can call 1-800-Pavement and you'll get them as well. They'd be happy to run you through kind of the advantages and everything else that we've been taking advantage of here at Wiscote and Dubuque Asphalt Maintenance, and how it can benefit you as well. Once again, if you're curious about it at all, you can always DM me. So yeah, 1-800-Blacktop. You can DM me or message me or email me through the podcast or Wiscote or wherever as well. I would love to talk to you about how it has helped us. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Blacktop Banter. We've been having quite a mixture as of late, whether it was contractors or indie race car drivers like the previous episode. And I really wanted to get onto somebody that knows our industry somewhat better than I do on all scales and does a lot with marketing and branding. I know I get a lot of calls and I field a lot of questions about branding and what we do. I employ like a shotgun tactic where I just put out a lot of content all the time on every platform through every business. And I make it so that people are synonymous. You know, when they think Wiscote is synonymous with asphalt maintenance, you think about a podcast in the industry, you think of Blacktop Banter. That's my approach. There are more tactical, a lot better ways to take down your prey than always using the shotgun approach like I do. So I really am happy to have not only another voice that I believe is fantastic at branding as well, but a female voice as well, which I always enjoy that perspective on this podcast. Jeannie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for letting me come and hang out with you today. Super excited. My name is Jeani. I actually grew up in the industry. So I am currently Jeani Ringkob, was raised Jeani Brazier. So I grew up in Brazier Asphalts. So I spent over 25 years growing up in the family business. So I've ran the screed, the roller, done the traffic control, all the things. So did a lot of sales and marketing, was super blessed where we were mostly Southwest United States, a lot in New Mexico, Colorado. We had some really great partners. We had Koch Industries, Holly Asphalts, Southwest Emulsions, and I had amazing mentors, not just even in my company, but outside, which is one of the things I love about the industry. And then also had an opportunity to go and work for some other great names in the company. Like I said, one of our partners was Koch. And so I got to go and do a stint with Koch in their pavement solutions and performance roads in the Midwest region. So I got to spend some lab time in Terre Haute, Indiana, which was really fun. Geeked out in the lab a little bit and made some really great contacts in that region as well. And then ended up back in Colorado and did a stint with Vance Brothers as well, which is another great, really incredible company, family business that's just had incredible success, and still a lot of the same folks still working there than when I was there. I always love going back and connecting with them. So that's really great. And just really all the great contacts. I just was at World of Asphalt not long ago, and it's just so fun to see everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a little bit of time here. I keep coming back. My husband tried to get me into ag, and I went for a while, and it's like a rubber band. I just snapped right back.
Yeah, that's one thing I've come to find out is that, like, I don't know if it's just safe or we just know it, you know, and it's interesting. It's always interesting, our industry is. There's always
Yeah.
something else going on, right? And for
Right.
me, I enjoy that aspect of it, that it's not super overcomplicated, but yet there's always improvements and things going on. And now when, you know, when we talk about branding and marketing and business side of it, it opens a whole new can of worms besides just the actual labor that we do, right?
Right.
And the things we install. So,
Right.
you know, let's talk about how, well, we can talk about story built and everything and that aspect of business as well. And, you know, we're in a new day and age, and you know, flashback 10-15 years ago, you and I wouldn't have been doing a podcast like this
No.
at all, right? And especially
No.
about asphalt, I have a feeling we wouldn't have been.
No.
But times have changed, they've changed rapidly. Talk about that a little bit and with story build and what you do.
So, I mean, I think you're right. Like our industry is evolving. It's evolving, I think, really quickly in the last 5 years. I feel like it's had a huge acceleration. I feel like the world is just shrinking on us, and we're really starting to open our eyes to what other things other industries are doing, which creates new opportunities for us right here. So I think I'm addicted to podcasts. I'm a total podcast junkie. But I don't know if that's the marketer in me. I love reading, I love books, I love to learn. So I think that this is a great platform of like free quality information.
Yeah.
And I think it's helped shrink our community and helped connect us and share best practices and share stories, which I think when it comes to building a business, to going to work every single day, it's all about stories. And that's how, connecting, making connections. It's marketing, it's technology and all these tools, right? Like podcasting, but it still comes down to the human connections and the stories that we can share, which I think that likens back to when we were cavemen sitting around communicating, sharing stories, passing time, sharing knowledge from one generation to the next. Some of this stuff hasn't changed.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the major reasons why Blacktop Banner exists. When I talk about the origin story of it, is simply there were stories being told at National Pavement Expo when I first started going that some people had never heard. And if something were to happen to these people, they would never hear them. They would just be lost.
Right.
And some of these stories were fantastic. And some of them were, like you were talking about, free knowledge. They were great pieces of knowledge that I was getting that I knew were going to help me scale my business. And if I
Right.
wouldn't have went and met these people and heard these stories, this wouldn't have happened. When that started to transition to, that's how you grow your business too and connect with other people. When that kind of little, you know, electrode went zzz and connected, and then I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So, you know, that's how I do my branding now, is we try to tell a
Right.
story. You know, we started Dubuque Asphalt Maintenance, and you can follow a vlog along of me starting in an office that I had to rent, and now we moved into where we're doing commercial estimates and everything else. So it's been a fantastic journey, and the story is the fun part of it. It keeps
Right.
people engaged.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, if we think about stories, there's so many great stories. And when I hear you talk, it reminds me of stories that I have from my past that I like to tell. And we talked about how we always keep coming back to this industry, right? And people leave and then they come back, or they never leave. They really stay here and they build a whole life here and they raise their families. And we're very generational. We're very word of mouth attracting industry.
Yes.
And I think about when I was about 8 years old, and I share this story, and it's one that really resonates with people when I share it. And I hear other people say very similar things. I was driving between Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Grants with my dad. We were headed to visit a customer. And I asked him, Dad, of all the things that we could do for business, why this? Like, it's hot, it's sweaty, it's dirty, it's long hours, it's seasonal. Like, if you grew up in a family business, you see the stress,
Oh yeah.
So, and he said, I get to be part of building the backbone of this country. I'm just one person, but if I do this, I get to be a part of something much bigger. I get people to work safe. I get goods to grocery stores, and he would point out people on the road, and he said, like that guy driving in his truck right now is driving on a safer road, and he's going to get to work and he's going to make a living, and then he's going to get home to his family. And his wife drove to the grocery store that day, and his kids were in the bus and they were safe, and the truck made it to the grocery store, and the military got to the base. And it completely changed the way I felt about what we did. And that never left me. And I see that in the people that are in this industry, that work in this industry. And I think it's part of why I am super passionate about, helping people grow their businesses. We risk so much. We put so much out there. The work we do is essential and it's vital. And especially look at COVID-19. We were so essential. This work had to keep going. So I think I want to see more people succeed in this business, but it's hard to run your business and be in the trenches every day. And then all of a sudden you look up and you go, oh, what's my next move? How am I going to grow? I have a million things I could do, but I don't know what the right one is. I only have so much time, so much asset. What am I going to do to get to that next level so I can build a bigger team, offer them more security, all of the things that we want to do.
Yeah. And, you hit the nail on the head with your dad thinking that deep, right, about what it is. It basically boils down to it's important, right?
Right.
What we do is just important. And when I first started putting myself out there with Wiscoat, making YouTube videos and different things, I would get calls to the business phone. Half the calls would be contractors or people that wanted to start doing what we were doing with the asphalt maintenance, and being like, hey, how do I do this? Hey, how do I do it? And then a lot of it, I was like, you're farther along than I am. I don't have the answer to this one, but I do know some people that do, right?
Right.
I would like, hey, go to National Pavement Expo, go to World of Asphalt, ask these people these questions. Just walk up and ask them. They'll tell you. They will. They love to share it, and everybody wants best practices. If you're in our industry and you want a better industry, you understand that best practices is the best way to go about it. Not only does it improve our industry, but it improves our top line too, as well, eventually, just because we're doing so much better work. But to fall back to what we were talking about, it's important. And like you said, you want to help. That's the whole reason why this exists. I would get calls from people who say, Marvin, I don't want to work at a job anymore. I did this in high school, or I did this in college for a guy that was very successful. I want to be successful at it. We need it. My family needs it. And then some of my best advice early on was, thank God I was right about it, was Facebook ads are the best money you can spend right now. Drop a pin on your location where you want to work, turn the camera around on your face and tell them what you have to offer. And luckily at the time when I dropped that information, it was hitting perfect in stride, thanks to Gary V pounding it in my head. It worked out fantastically. But times have changed now. I mean, it's clouded. I mean, it's clouded in there. There's a lot going on. How do we sort all that out, Jeani? How do we sort all that out?
I think what you're saying is so right. And we're seeing it more than ever. And our industry is this weird thing, because I think everybody's opening their eyes to. So when I think about brand, and I think about brand strategy, one of the models I use is the clock model. And you think about all the exposure pre-purchase, like everything that attracts a customer to you, their very first awareness of you. And that's a lot of what, back in the day, our consumer products would just pump millions of dollars. Coke, when Coke started, they just pump millions of dollars out there, and you buy Tide and you buy Crest, and that's how you did it. That doesn't work anymore.
Right.
But yet we still have to show up. We still have to have brand recognition and awareness, but we have to start thinking about other things. So if we think about it, that's the first part of the clock model, maybe the 12 to 3, and then maybe the 4 to 7 or so. And it can be different based on each company's, position, is the purchase.
Right.
And what is the experience like? And I always think about it as customer touch points as we go around the clock. Right. And it can be employee touch points, because you can apply this to attracting talent into your company. You can apply it to attracting customers into your company. You can use it for attracting better partners into your company. But what are the touch points then when they actually purchase your product? What is it like when your salesperson goes out there and gives them a proposal? And how do you make it memorable and a really great experience? So people want more from that, and they want more from what we call post-purchase on the backside these days.
Right.
They want more from that experience. They expect more because other industries have shifted that way.
Correct.
Even Nike, who is a powerhouse, right, in the pre-purchase, in the advertising, you can smell a Nike ad, I think 3 commercials before it even comes on. Like, they're just amazing. But they have even shifted and gotten more into really owning their distribution and stuff like that, because it's just hard to swim in that bloody water
Right.
anymore. So I think we have to get more creative about understanding what are the other touch points we have with our customers or our partners or our employees. And then I always think about it in terms of recycling. We can recycle those experiences and touch points back into our pre-purchase, back into your podcast, back into your social media. And it becomes more authentic and it's more real then, because it's not you creating something, it's you showing what it could be like for them and what success is like on the backside for your customers or your great partner.
Yeah.
Or the employees on your team and how you're meeting their needs and meeting them where they're at too. So I'm thinking about it a little bit differently. And for me, I'm kind of like a business strategy junkie.
Yeah.
So I just have a different approach, and I'm always breaking it down into models, and I'm finding models that we can use, and I'm looking at case studies from other industries and companies, and how can we borrow what they've already learned or they've done.
Yeah.
So I think that is the first thing that comes to mind when I think about how do you really be unique, is think about it. There's more to just running ads these days, right?
Right.
And then if you are putting content out, how do you be authentic and leverage all the customer touch points to be part of that and get the most value for your company? And honestly, it's what's working these days. It's authentic, it's real, and people want to see under the kimono or behind the curtain or whatever you want to say,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
People want to know, like, what's for real here.
Yeah.
So I think that matters too. And then we have to think about being different. How are we going to differentiate from our competition, from other employers? Just because, I think, and I keep saying, employees and employers, because that's a big thing right now in our industry is workforce development. And that's what some of my client projects right now are working on. Because we can apply a lot of the same strategies and the tools that we use in marketing and sales to attracting better teams and building better cultures.
How much of that do you think is reliant on the foundation being the culture of the company to begin with, as far as the
I
touch
think it's
points and things? Do you think that's
I think it's really
essential?
big.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's really big. So actually, when I work with clients, some of the stuff we talk about is actually the brand, the essence of the brand and the brand identity. And we talk about things like, what are your immutable laws? For example, I worked with a company, one of their immutable laws, we were working on some mission and stuff like that to try to really kind of help them. They've been around for multiple generations, and they felt like they kind of needed to get in touch with what they stood for now before they could really decide, how do we want to position ourselves in the market? And so we went back and we actually redid some mission, and I used something called immutable laws. I first think I heard about it from Mike McAllowitz, I want to say, in his toilet paper entrepreneur book, maybe.
Yeah, that's where it was.
And he talks about one where it was like, no jackasses, right?
Yep.
Like, we just won't work with or do business with people that are dicks, like just whatever.
Get it.
So like they were creating some stuff like that, and it really helped him. First off, it helped him understand, who are we going to hire? Like, like, who fits our culture? Who are we going to let walk through the doors? Because one of the reasons culture is hard to change is because we have to be intentional about who we let through those doors.
Yeah.
And if we don't know what we want to protect in our culture, and we haven't identified that and communicated it to our team, which is really important. You can sit in a room with the key stakeholders and decide this stuff, but if you don't communicate it to your team and you don't wear it on your sleeve and own it,
Correct.
you're never going to get traction.
Right. Yeah.
So
I think
it matters. It matters a lot, but it's hard to move those things.
And I think that part of that is that our industry, all the companies within it, I mean, not huge companies. Obviously, they have a better shot at having more leaders in more positions to help enforce a culture. But
Right.
most of them that are, 25, 50 employees, whatever, there's a real laissez-faire kind of attitude where it's just like this is how it's been. This is what it is. We're a jumble
Right.
of all this mixture together. And then when you are out in the marketplace, right? If we're doing work, and people can feel that, the customer can feel that, they can see that, whether they're a
Right.
property manager or
Your
whatever.
partners, your suppliers,
Right. And we're,
everybody.
we're in an industry that is always a little behind compared to advanced
Right.
industries. And rather
Right.
than that being a negative, we can actually have a positive of that, doing like you were
Right.
talking about. You're, reading on business strategy and everything else and all these other industries where the changes already happen. We get a chance to kind of not get hit in the face with it. We can kind
Right.
of plan for it and move into it and do those types of things. How do we do that? Like, how do we, for me, it's easy for me to say, well, I just do it because I've surrounded myself with that kind of culture outside of the
Right.
industry with my friends and stuff. But when you're in one, like if you're in a company that isn't like that, what's your first step? Like, is it people right away? I mean, there's core values and like you said, immutable laws
Right.
and things like that. But if you come up with a plan, how do you start enforcing that thing? What's some advice for that for starters?
Right. I think the first thing, and I mentioned it, is you got to be methodical about communicating it. So, like when I think about the company specifically that I was thinking about, once we did that, we actually created communication pieces. We created a keynote for the leader. We created some emails. And what we did, because I'm very, I spend a lot of time on research and strategy up front, but I believe in like taking everything full circle. So I really feel like, okay, how are we going to take this big stuff that feels a little bit fluffy and abstract,
Yep.
and how do we actually take it down to every single person in the company and mean something? So we actually went through an exercise where we took it down every single level, and we really determined, and I like to use what I call like a functional mission statement too, so that we can, every single person in the company can look at that and say, I know how my job can impact that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually went down, and every single person in their company had metrics, like lead activities that they knew would impact lag metrics
Okay.
that actually moved that functional mission statement, because it was a mission statement and it had a little bit of fluff to it, but it actually had some very specific things like how many customers are we going to impact, and
Okay.
what does success look like? And so, somebody in HR could specifically say how their role in supporting and hiring X number of new people and increasing retention was going to help them get to that goal. Right. And so it helped him get really, really clear about, look, these three activities are probably the most important thing in my job. I may do a lot of other stuff, but it helped them get really clear on, like, I know what my most important activities are every single day. So
Wow.
for me, I like to see something like that go all the way from the top, all the way to the bottom, so that
Mm-hmm.
you actually feel momentum
Yeah.
all the way through the company.
Yeah, and you said a key word there with feel. You can
Right.
feel like
Right.
here where we are at Wiscoat in my office, we have four sayings on the floor as soon as you walk in. The guys see them every day, and one of my favorite ones is "Don't half-ass it today," right? Like I
Right.
want them to see that. But even though they're there, and even though they're in front, I can feel atmospherically when we've taken our foot and our focus, our foot off the gas and our focus off of the road with our core values that we have. So then
Mm-hmm.
is it something where when you feel that, when you're in the leadership position to feel that, where you do something to revisit that? I mean, how do you keep that momentum going from the top up all the way down, especially when you can feel that we're straying from it a little bit or we're not as focused in our industry, especially up here in the north where we are, when we're cracking in the summer, that's
Right.
one of the things that get put on the back burner. Where does that start with me as a leader? Does it start with, hey, we need to reassess, guys, refocus on this and do this? Is there an activity? What is it that can help us with that and keep that going?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it in terms of, I think our industry and any seasonal industry, Like I mentioned, my husband drugged me into the ag world for a while. So I've done some work over in the ag
Oh yeah,
world, which is
that's true.
interesting because there's actually like the Cargills, the Cokes, like there's a lot of
Yeah,
the same players in those industries. But the seasonality is there, and there's an extra tension on industries and businesses that are seasonal. And I think you have to expect a little bit of fray, like is how I think about it during your push season. But you want to be tight enough that a little bit of fray isn't going to completely unravel you. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's super critical to think about this stuff, to think about your culture, your strategy. I mean, even your strategy about who are you in the market? How are you positioning? Who's your real competition?
yeah,
How are you positioning your products? All of that stuff is part of that. But I think it has to start with leaders because we have more at stake.
right.
The truth of the matter is, if you're an owner, you're a key stakeholder in a business, you need to always be having a pulse on that. And you can't allow, like, you're going to have a lot on your plate, but you have to have your finger on that pulse and you have to feel it when it happens. And it may mean that your team is just they're just overdone,
Yeah,
right? Or that you're not regularly communicating. So I mentioned communicating. We have to be kind of expressing all the time. So I love what you're doing with putting it on the floor,
yeah,
like actually put it where people can see it,
yep,
and it's going to remind them, and that probably does more for your culture than you realize that it
yeah,
does, because they see it every single day. But I think as leaders we have to feel it, and then we have to, really be in touch. And I think I always think about, it's important to have so I talked about like bringing it all the way down through everybody in the company. We also need to have, the communication goes both ways. We need to make sure that we have feedback loops. And when we start to feel that, that's a great time to be talking to superintendents, supervisors,
yeah,
all the people on a level, even go down and talk to everybody that's just out there working, right?
mm,
And just kind of, they'll tell you what's going on. They'll tell you how bad it is. Or they'll tell you if, a half a day off or something's going to just save everybody.
right.
There's one bad seed that's maybe causing some problems. I mean, I had a company that had no processes or systems in place for feedback, and their retention numbers were just plummeting. Well, they had one terrible supervisor that was just running people off, but because they didn't have a feedback loop, there was no communication. They didn't, the leaders hadn't designed it into the process that one of your main jobs. So we talked about like the 3 things that might move your needle.
Uh-huh.
As a leader, one of those is to understand what's going on in your company. And it probably
Yeah,
means you need to be going and having, regular structured meetings that are efficient and effective with your leaders in your company,
yeah,
and
that's good.
capturing what I call like a feedback loop so that you can see that and hear it quick. And once they realized a lot of damage had already been done, they had lost a lot of great people underneath him, and it was just toxic. And all they needed to do, instead of losing 10, they needed to fire 1.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
So I think it comes down to communication and knowing what your priorities are in your role. And as a leader, you got to be focused upstream and big picture on your company's strategy, but you got to still have that pulse in the company and have that communication inside the company.
yeah. And to to think about it in that sense, I have a friend who's fairly active on LinkedIn as well, which I should mention is how we met, right? Was from
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If you're in our industry and not on LinkedIn, you're missing out. I keep
Oh,
telling
yeah.
that there's a lot going on there. It's
There
the
is.
it's the Instagram of 5 years ago for our
Yeah.
industry. Like when I
Right.
first found out everybody was on it or who was on Instagram, I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. Now I'm
Yeah.
finding out about LinkedIn. But I have a friend on there and he had that same experience. He had a paver operator that mainly felt like he had him by the cojones and was like,
Right.
you can't get rid of me. You don't know how to run the paver. Like you know, and you just have to deal with it. Who are you going to get to lay down 150 ton the next day or whatever it was? And he admittedly, he's like, yeah, he was right. But that night I was like, you know what? Forget it. He's like, fired the guy. Luckily, they had some pavers that come help him learn how to run it that day. And since then, he was like, it changed the culture completely in a shift where it needed to go in order to
Right.
scale and grow and create the culture that he wanted to create.
Well, yeah, because what it said, first off, to anybody else that was going to create problems, it said, we're serious, right?
Right, right,
And also, it said to everybody that was suffering because of that person that, hey, we got your back. We're not
right.
leaving you out there to deal with this. It's not right. We know it's not right. And we're going to do the right thing because
Yeah.
you got to work here. Like, and we
Yeah.
want you to work here. So there's multiple benefits to doing the right thing.
So if you have your culture aligned correctly and then you have your strategy, right, of where we're going to touch on those points around the clock, like you were talking about,
Right.
um, you're set to go. What if you're at least set to work with somebody to get a strategy to get to where you want to go, right? Because let's be honest, when I started, all I knew how to do was seal coat blacktop, patch holes, fill cracks. I didn't know anything about social media marketing or strategy or any of that thing. I'm willing to bet 80% of our business owners in our industry are probably in that same ballpark as well. It's a lot
Right.
easier for them to stick to what they know to do and, work with somebody that they know and trust and is reputable to help with this new kind of change. Now, you can kind of farm that up through your own industry like your
Right.
family was fortunate to do, right, with you.
Right.
Um, but there's going to be guys that don't. What are some good strategies and tips for people that are in the asphalt industry that are like, okay, I want to get to that point, right, to
Mhm.
where it's time for me to hire somebody to help with strategy. I would love to get to that point, but right now it's me and two other guys and we're trying to make something happen here. What would be the advice right now, nowadays social media and world, for some marketing and tips and things to get going to get to a point where they can have some income, expendable income, to focus on a larger strategy plan for their company for the future?
Yeah. I think usually when I'm talking to companies in that situation, it's good to I always tell them it's okay to be at that place where you need to focus on sales and the creation of cash in your business. That it's okay to be at that place because, and I always want to remind them because sometimes I think they feel guilty. There's a little bit of like, oh, I haven't quite made it yet or
Yeah.
something like that. But that's not true. We all of our businesses as we grow, they're like volcanoes, right? They get bigger and as they grow, they need more cash. We always are cycling back to that phase where we don't have as many liquid assets to us or we just can't spend as much on things and we're going back to those roots of selling. So I think first off, don't be ashamed that like that's where you're at right now because the world is built on those and we love it. And there's so many resources out there. So I think some of the things I think about are stay niche down, stay good at what you're good at and be really good at it and do it really good.
Yeah.
That's going to help keep you from maybe spending money on things that aren't necessary, equipment, team, stuff like that. Keep it lean, keep it niche down, focus where you can bring the most value, and it's going to help keep your business streamlined and help you get the most success and also really increase your reputation. So that's going to help your bottom line and help you get there. It's really easy in the world that we live in to always want to be doing what somebody else is doing to try to get that next cool piece of equipment that does it differently. Really try to make sure that you're an expert at what you're doing. You've really got it mastered. And it's also the next thing about that is it leads to something that I use in strategy, and it's called differentiation. So there's 3 criteria to any strategy. If you're going to look at a strategy and you're going to say, is this the right thing? Do we go down path A, B, or C? Whichever path you pick, you need a litmus test. Is it different? So are you differentiated from your competition? And then is it relevant to your customers? And then lastly, are you uniquely positioned to sustain it over your competition? And if you look at Apple, if you look at Google, Amazon, all of them still use this before they make decisions in their company. So it's relevant no matter how small or big that you are. But I think staying focused on where you can really be different, and the better you are at something, the more different you are.
Yeah.
So when you're small like that, stay focused on what makes you different. Make sure that it's relevant to your customers. Don't get off on tangents and realize all of a sudden that you're not serving or solving a problem for your customers anymore. Don't add touch points. Like we talked about the touch points around the clock. If it's not relevant to your customer, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Right? So don't
Yeah.
spend money, don't spend time on it. Maybe it'll be worth it later down the road, but if it's not relevant right now, you don't have to do it. And if you can't sustain it, it's not worth doing anyway.
Right. Yeah. Even, when I talk to people now about branding, or we have partners that work with the podcast, when they see our media kit and it says, 6-month minimum, they're like, really? And I'm like, your RO, you ain't gonna see an ROI in week, or
No,
with one sponsor on a podcast. Like, your brand has to be synonymous with our brand, and it takes
right.
a long time, right? And I think that that's the hard part for a lot of people to grasp now, because when we think about old school, they would put an ad in the newspaper, right? Or they would just put their name in the phone book, and they would get an ROI. Boom, boom, boom,
Right.
boom,
As
boom.
soon as the ad hit, you'd
Right,
see some kind of traction, some kind of
right,
movement. Right.
right. And
Right.
and now, it's not so hot. It takes the lettering on your truck. It takes a podcast if that's what you want. It takes a
Right.
YouTube channel, videos, all these things. We do a lot with fundraisers and giveaways just for the
Hmm.
recognition of, hey, that we're there. Um,
Right.
what does it look like, you think, for the future of this? Are people always going to be, because I don't ever see it changing. I think the only time it would change is if something changed that was beyond social media or the internet, whenever that next big industrial age things come. I think this stuff is pretty much mandatory, right? Like, it's,
Oh, yeah.
you
I
can't
mean,
function
right.
unless you're happy, I guess, with the two guys, and you get to go fishing for half the day because
Right.
you only
Right.
did what you needed to
Right.
do. But
Yeah.
most people with the entrepreneurial bug aren't happy with
Right.
that.
I always tell people, if you're happy being stagnant, I'm not your person. Like,
No, no.
you're not going to like me. You're not going to enjoy me, because I think it's all cyclical, right? Like,
Right,
you investigate, you find stuff, you design a solution, you implement it, and then you measure it. So I love what you said about 6 months, just to comment on that real quick,
yeah,
because something that I do that's different is, after I work with my clients, we develop the strategy, which it tends, I try to find data. We have qualitative data, all the things to support what we're doing. But I also stick around for 6 months, and sometimes longer, depending on what they need and what resources they have internally and what the recommendations and the strategies are. Or else I partner them with other experts that they need to execute on that, or I help
mhm,
them find that person and train them up inside their company. But for 6 months, I'm there and we're just measuring. We're just,
right,
you know what I mean? Because you're going to need to, it's like sailing a boat. You're going to tack, like you're going to get blown off course. Something's going to happen. So what you said about 6 months is right. And it's relevant for all of these types of strategic decisions that we're making.
right.
You have to be ready to measure, and you can't sit on it for 6 months and not have actively known what are we
What's
doing
going
and how are
on?
we measuring it,
Correct.
and doing it on a regular basis so that you can adjust. So I try to make sure, and like you said, we get busy in our businesses. It's
Right.
hard. And so you kind of need somebody saying, hey, this is what we're measuring. What are we seeing? What does this mean for us?
Mhm.
What could be impacting this? And if we make adjustments, we make adjustments. There's no harm and foul in that. That's what good strategy is. But I think, to answer your question, no, it's not changing. Like, we've talked about how advertising is harder. It's harder to rise above the noise, but our brand is how we're perceived in the hearts and the minds of our industry, of our markets, of our customers, of our partners. All of those, of our competition even,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we have to be really intentional about that. And as a matter of fact, we have to be more intentional, because people are actually making decisions based more about how they feel about our brand than they are about the actual products they're buying.
Yeah. I think
I
so
mean, why
too.
do you choose Apple versus Samsung, or Samsung versus Apple?
Yeah.
Why do you drive the car you drive, right? Why do you wear the shoes that you wear? We all do it because the brand has very intentionally positioned themselves, and it's almost subconscious because it's happening around us all the time.
Hmm.
But the companies that don't figure this out are going to be the companies that get left behind, and
Yeah.
that are stagnant, that stall out, that don't make it to the next generation, and that don't, that just don't reach the success that they want to reach.
Yeah, I to comment on that, that was a fantastic point. I had a client yesterday where we estimated a project and they called us back and said somebody a little more local is offering the same service at a far better price. And my response was, how do you know it's the same service? So, well, they're going to seal coat, crack fill, and line stripe. I said, well, that's just the start of the service. The service is
Right.
much, much more than that. You're trailing 6 months afterwards, the follow-up, the warranty, the guarantee, the owner being there on the project. I'm like, these are all things that you're paying for that's
Right.
rounded into that square footage price.
Right.
And here you're focused on somebody that can just do it the cheapest. What
Right.
that's literally what you're saying. So that's what
Right.
you should expect, right? And the guy was like, yeah, I know better than that. And it was literally just like, all right, but they're cheaper, right? And so then I knew, thankfully, we're in a position now where we don't have to win every
Right.
client, right? But then I
Right.
also knew that that wasn't the client that I wanted. I almost want the client that values that, right? Because those are the clients that word of mouth still exists. And those are the clients that are going to go on social media or they're going to be at a meeting or at a fundraiser or whatever and say, oh, I know the company for you. These guys were
Right.
fantastic. They did
Right.
this, they did that. Every person I met was so knowledgeable about what we do. My crew lead here, Chris, him and I go round and round sometimes. But when I get a call back to the office and they say, Chris was fantastic, he answered every single question I knew, was very thorough. We've never had an experience like that. Those are the ones that give me goosebumps because
I know,
I know
right?
I'm doing it right. But like I said, I have a shotgun tactic where we're very rural. So even though I do it
Okay.
half-assedly, it's still leagues above everybody else. But I do know from having friends that are in more urban areas, more populated areas, they have to be straight tacticians with this stuff.
Right.
Like their strategy has to be perfect for them to rise
Right.
above everybody else and be the cream of the crop. And that's kind of where what you do comes in
Right.
fantastically. Can we talk about that a little bit and what you offer with Story Built?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things what you're saying. So I think it's awesome because I think about your clock and you've got all this stuff on the backside, right? A lot of times I see folks that have some of that and they just need to, then you need to market it, right? You need to
Right.
sell it.
It's
You
an
need to
asset.
talk about it.
Yeah.
If it's there, but nobody knows, like, if nobody knows that the Genius Bar is in the Apple store, then it
Yep.
doesn't matter that the Genius Bar is in the Apple store,
I
right?
nailed it. Yeah.
Right.
Bingo.
So, and that's part of, and that's a company, like if you think about it, they lean heavily into purchase and post purchase.
Hmm.
They invested huge in what we call a temple to the brand.
Right.
And they said, we are not going to, even though they are incredible advertisers, they invested a lot of their resources and assets back into those other experiences. And it's paying huge dividends for
Oh
them.
yeah.
So for me, I think I have people come to me a lot and say, we want marketing services, but like, I'm like, I can find you an incredible web designer, but I'm not going to start talking to you about your website until like we talk about strategy.
Right. Yeah.
And so for me, it always starts with strategy. So for me, it's clients that we're not, like I said before, we're not okay with status quo. We want to grow. And I know what I'm good at.
Right.
And I know that I need help to see clearly through the trees what the best path is for me. And then I want somebody to point me in the right direction and tell me what tools I need to get there. So that's typically how I work is, and it's different on a case by case basis. Right now I'm doing a project where, workforce was the bottleneck over there. And so we're tipping the strategy and we're looking at workforce because if you think about it, if we go back to Mike McCallowitz, another tool of his is the business hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
And so people think, oh, I have plenty of sales. Somebody told me the other day, I have plenty of sales. I don't have a problem in sales in my business. I just turned away a $6 million job because I just can't put together another crew. And I'm like, you have a sales problem because you are not capable of executing on the work that you could have.
Right.
Right. That's still a sales
Sales problem.
problem.
Yeah.
Like sales has to go full circle. So is really helping them understand, where is that critical bottleneck in your business, and really kind of like clearing off all the fog. And then once you do that for people, it's just like, oh my gosh, yes. And now, like, it's just a huge relief to have clarity and be
Yeah.
like, I see how I can get through this, and I see how to get to the next level.
Yeah.
So for me, that's how I work. And then I can, I partner with other agencies and with other experts. I have people, copywriters and stuff inside my company. I have partners. So I mostly do strategy, and then I have partners, or I kind of meet people where they're at. I have people that are like, hey, we want to hire somebody and build them up in our company. Well, we can design it that way, and I can help you make sure you find the right person based on where we know you're going. Or I need to find an outside agency or partner to do this for me.
Yeah.
I even have some that say, hey, can you act as a fractional CMO and make sure we stay on strategy for 6 months while we build a team, or while we're transitioning to somebody doing it for us? Or can you manage the people that you're outsourcing and just manage it for me, because I don't want to touch it.
Right.
It's working and I don't want anything to do with that piece of it. I just want it to work. So
Yeah.
you got to kind of meet people, because everybody's different with how they run their business. Everybody wants a certain different level of involvement. And I work with different size companies. So I always say strategy first. We got to know where we're at. And it's something that most of my clients, we do. It's harder and it's bigger the first time. But then it's something where, like, we find a strategy, they execute, we measure results, they get traction, they love the growth. And so, like, then we do like a strategy sprint, like a year later or something, we find that next thing. And it's quicker and it's easier every single time, because now they know what to expect. They, the weeds are starting to get cleared off, and we're just re-looking at, okay, what is the competition doing now? What is the market doing right now? Do we have a new product that it makes sense to add to our lineup? So it can be really, really quick, and it's like a flywheel in your business, and you can just get it going really, really fast.
Jeani, you geek out on this stuff, don't
I
you?
do. I geek out. Totally geek out. And
No,
my clients are so happy they don't have to.
yeah, yeah. It's very, 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 very cool to see. It reminds me of like World of Asphalt and MPE when I'm there, and we're talking about new products, and somebody has my attention for a long time, and then all of a sudden I'll snap out of it, and I'll be like, man,
What
that was
happened?
absolutely informative. Yes, and I love it. I love that aspect of our industry, and I geek out on it as well.
Right. Right.
And it shows, and it's advantageous, because for a lot of people in our industry, they want nothing to do with it. So to have
Right.
somebody that's so interested in it, that means that they're going to adapt well over time with that kind of stuff. So
Right.
very, very cool. How does somebody, I have a feeling more than likely after this conversation, somebody's going to want to be like, hey, how do I get a hold of Jeani? How do they do that? How do people find you?
So I'll give you two ways.
Okay.
You guys can call me. Like, I'm that person. Just
Oh,
call me.
cool.
Like,
Okay.
I'm still a little old school too.
Yeah.
Like, pick up the phone and call me, text me. I want to just talk. Like, I love to hear, like, I love stories. I want to hear
Okay.
about your business. So I'll probably drop a few golden nuggets in your lap just because I can't help it. Like I said. And then I also have a tool. I actually have like a really fun assessment tool that companies can take. And we actually used it at World of Asphalt in my presentation. We went through it and interacted on it. And then afterwards, I actually went a little bit deeper with anybody that wanted more information about, hey, this is, it looks like I have problems in sales, or it's more, processes and systems that I'm struggling. So I actually have an assessment tool that they can go take.
Cool.
So I'll give you both of those
All right.
right now. So if you go to storybuilt.marketing/assessment, and I'll send that link to you so you can drop it in the notes if
I
you want
will.
to.
Yep. And that story built is it BILT?
BUILT
Okay. So
dot marketing.
storybuilt.marketing.
Yep.
Okay.
/assessment. They can take the assessment tool. It's kind of fun. I love those kinds of things. And it's going to help you kind of narrow in a little bit closer to what part of your business, is it processes? Is it profit? Is it sales? What is it? And then call me. So my cell phone number is 720-441-7660.
Cool. And then I have to say, to follow you on LinkedIn, there's
Yep.
always some kind of little information coming out there that is, like you said, another little nugget here or there, or just staying up to pace with how everything is going.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you to come back on at some point here as things change in
Yeah.
the future and we think about that. There's going to be, I'm sure, questions that come up and conversations with some of my friends or whoever at some whatever point about certain things as far as strategy goes. And I would love to have your take on some of those as well. So,
and I'm happy to do hot seats. Hot seats are
oh
fun.
yeah, they are.
I think that would be super fun. I'm going to be speaking at the Con Expo. I'm doing a presentation on strategy growth strategy, and I'm also doing one on recruiting and retaining talent. So come find me there.
I will. I'll see you there.
Hopefully I get to tell me you heard me on the podcast.
Yeah.
Find me and tell me.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And then yeah, I keep thinking for some of my presentations, I need to build in hot seats. It would just be fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun to put people. I enjoy being in the hot seat. I like it. Because, and I
you
like
just get a little
other
free
people
advice. And if some person has that question, a million people have that question.
Oh yeah. And if not, they're gonna get to the point where it crosses their mind.
Right.
So
And they go, "Ooh, I gotta go find that episode because
that's right. Exactly.
Right.
That's what I do anyways.
I do too.
But I'm not a podcast junkie, but I'll scroll through all the episodes and see who they had as guests and what the topics were. And then later on my brain will go, oh, so and so had a podcast about this.
Yep.
And then I'll jump back and listen to them. And hopefully business strategy will be one here for everybody as well. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Fantastic. It was a great conversation. So for myself and for Jeani, this is Blacktop Banter episode 76. And here on Blacktop Banter, we speak asphalt a lot. We speak asphalt a lot. Enjoy. Have a good day. Peace.